Welcome. Wherever you are, I hope you're safe. I hope you're happy, because tonight, safety and happiness may not last long. Darkness has a way of finding us all, and sometimes it lingers closer than we think. For those who are struggling, I hope peace finds you. For those who are ill, may strength return to you. And for those who have already crossed over, may the shadows grant them rest. Remember me and my family in your thoughts as well, because what we summon here, we all summon together. Now, tonight's stories are not for the faint of heart. They are terrifying. If you scare easily, brace yourself. There's an old belief that when we speak of these creatures, they draw near, listening to every word. So as you hear these stories, know this: something may be listening with you right now. Before we begin, I need your help. Your likes truly help me. They show your appreciation and motivate me to keep working harder to bring you even darker, scarier stories. Your subscription is more than just a click. It's your welcome into the Spooky Stories family. So, gather your courage, hold tight, and let's step into tonight's chilling tales. This happened back in May of 2016. I come from a big family, 6 of us kids in total. By then, all of my sisters were married off, but none of the brothers were. One day, my dad came home with awful news. My aunt's son had died in a terrible accident. He was only 14 years old. It had been over 13 years since my mom and my aunt had spoken. Some bitter family dispute had kept them apart. But after that boy's funeral, the silence finally broke. My aunt's life was unraveling. She accused her in-laws of foul play, saying they had caused the accident out of greed for property. That tore the families apart. Eventually, my aunt had no choice but to leave her husband's house because of the case. She needed a rental quickly. She ended up finding an apartment in a big, older building on the east side of town. The place was surprisingly spacious, beautiful even, and the rent was cheap. But whenever we visited, she'd mutter, "I want to get out of this place." We couldn't understand it. Why leave such a big, affordable apartment? A month later, my older brother came back from working construction in the Middle East. His fiance's family pressed for a wedding date, and the plan was made. But since we were still living in my grandmother's cramped old house, we needed our own rental for the wedding. The problem was, every decent place nearby was either too expensive or way too small. That's when my mom suggested something to my aunt. She said, "Your apartment has 3 large bedrooms and a huge courtyard. Let us take it." But my aunt refused. She refused again and again, almost panicked. Finally, when no other house turned up and my mom pushed hard, my aunt gave in. We put the wedding address down as that apartment, and we moved in the day before the Mendy celebration. The moment we stepped inside, my brother said, "Something's wrong with this place. It doesn't feel right." We all laughed it off. The building itself was oddly structured. Each floor had 5 apartments, but at the very end of the hallway, there were only 3. One was locked up. Another was occupied by a bunch of night shift security guards who left before sunset. And the third one, the one we moved into, had 2 front doors and a wide courtyard inside. When my aunt handed over the keys, she gave us one strange warning. The room right across from the front door, don't ever use its bathroom. Keep it locked up. Use it as a storage room only. We agreed. At the time, it didn't seem like a big deal. The day of the Mendy, every room was packed with guests. I needed a place to change clothes, so I slipped into that storage room. The second I stepped inside, the air felt heavy, like someone was already standing there, staring at me. My chest tightened. My heart thundered. Cold sweat drenched my back. When I rushed out, my skin burned. I pulled up my shirt and saw deep red scratches across my back, as if clawed by fingernails. But with the wedding happening, I told no one. That night, my sister-in-law laid her 5-year-old daughter down in that same room while she got ready. Later, when the little girl woke up, she was different. She lashed out violently, hitting and kicking everyone around her. We were horrified. My sister-in-law tried praying over her, and only then did she calm down. That night, we made it through the wedding event, but later that night, around 3:30 a.m., we woke to my baby niece screaming. She was only 6 months old. Her tiny body lay twisted on her cot by the wall, her neck bent at an impossible angle as if someone had tried to snap it. We panicked. My cousin, who had memorized the Bible, prayed over her. Slowly, her neck straightened. The crying stopped. But the terror stayed. Nobody dared sleep inside after that. We dragged our bedding into the courtyard and huddled together until sunrise. The next morning, the baby's condition worsened. We had to admit her to the hospital. And still, my stubborn brother, the one who never believed in superstitions, scoffed. He said, "It's all in your heads." Defiantly, that night, he chose to sleep alone in that room. By morning, his attitude had completely changed. Without explanation, he warned us, "Never go in there again. Don't ever sleep in that room." From then on, everything in that apartment changed. The atmosphere was thick, ugly. We fought over the smallest things, and the joy of the wedding turned sour. At night, we heard chains creaking as if swings were swaying up on the roof. Windows that we nailed shut were mysteriously pried open again. Sometimes, we'd see shadows pass by. My mom herself once saw a figure standing in that cursed room. The bathroom lights flickered, the doors slammed open on their own, and invisible fists pounded on my brother's door at night. One evening during a storm, my sister walked into her bedroom and vanished. We searched the whole apartment until finally we found her crouched in that same forbidden room, hugging her knees in the corner, whispering, "I don't remember coming here." Later, when I tried praying inside that room, I felt someone standing directly behind me, their cold hands nearly touching my shoulders. I finished quickly and bolted. Things escalated. Knives disappeared from the kitchen. Laughter of unseen children echoed through the halls. And more than once, I woke to find someone lying beside me, only to realize in the morning that no one had been there. Within 15 days, that apartment nearly destroyed us. My aunt helped us find another place, and we moved out. But even while moving, workers reported being pushed, scratched, and taunted by a girl's laughter. Later, my aunt revealed the truth. The very first family to live in that apartment had been an immigrant family. A drug-addicted uncle locked his nieces in that room. He abused them and even let his friends do the same. 2 of the girls died under his torture. Their older sister killed him in revenge, chopped his body into pieces, and then slit her own throat. The police brushed it off as a family matter, and the case was buried. But the evil that was born in that room never left. Every family that moved in afterward faced chaos, fights, divorces, suicides, children dying in accidents from the roof. And that's why the apartment has remained mostly empty to this day. The last time one of my cousins went back to finalize the lease, he heard voices from inside. When he opened the door, a girl stood in the entryway, motioning him to come closer. He bolted. The landlord gave back his advance on one condition: "Don't tell anyone what you saw in there." But it was too late. Ever since living in that apartment, our family has never been the same. My brother's marriage ended in divorce. My sister's engagement nearly broke. My aunt's finances collapsed. My brother even had to undergo exorcisms for the things that clung to him. That cursed apartment nearly destroyed us all. And sometimes, when I dream, I'm still inside it. The same black shadow chases me down that long, narrow hallway. The Second Story by William. I've been bedridden for over 32 years now because of a spinal injury. Since I never got married, I've been living with my older brother. His son, my nephew Ethan, along with his wife and kids, take care of me. God bless them for that. We live in a modest but beautiful single-family home. It sits on a small lot in a quiet American suburb. We moved in back in 2012. At that time, Ethan was already married and had children. His oldest son is named Adam. 3 years after moving in, my younger nephew, Mark, got married too. Both his wife and Ethan's wife are sisters. Their father had passed away before the marriages. A couple years later, renovations began. The kitchen and bathrooms were remodeled. The whole house was repainted, and eventually, we added a second floor. At first, only the framework was finished, so Mark and his wife rented another place nearby. About a year later, the second floor was complete. After a family prayer, Mark, his wife, and her mother, whom I just call Aunt Mary, moved upstairs. Reflective. Aunt Mary had only daughters and no son of her own. She's been sick for years, suffering from asthma and kidney problems, going for dialysis twice a week. Mark and his wife later had 2 sons of their own. At first, life upstairs seemed perfectly normal. But then, strange things began happening. About a year after Mark and his family moved upstairs, unexplained activity began. Sometimes, we'd hear loud bangs like something heavy had fallen. Other times, it sounded like furniture being dragged across the floor. One night, around 2:30 a.m., I woke to noises directly above my room. It sounded like a horse or some large animal pacing in circles. I thought maybe Mark was walking around because of a stomachache. But when I asked him the next morning, he said, "Uncle, I slept the whole night. I didn't get up once." Other times, they'd hear footsteps running quickly past their door, or footsteps climbing the stairs. But whenever they checked, the sounds would stop, intensifying. One evening, Mark came home from work, lay down in bed to rest, and closed his eyes. Suddenly, he felt something climb onto his chest. The weight grew heavier and heavier until he couldn't move. Then invisible hands wrapped around his throat, choking him. Strained, desperate. Mark tried to open his eyes, but he couldn't. He couldn't move his arms. He couldn't move his legs either. It felt like his body was no longer his own. In desperation, he began silently reciting prayers in his mind, whispering relief. Slowly, the grip on his throat loosened. The weight on his chest faded, and at last, he was free. He opened his eyes, sat up quickly, and looked around. But the room was empty. Tense. This wasn't an isolated event. Not long after, Ethan's oldest son, who was about 19 at the time, came home from his night shift. He greeted some relatives who were visiting, then went upstairs to crash in Mark's room. Minutes later, he ran back down terrified. He said the exact same thing had happened to him. Something had climbed onto his chest and tried to strangle him. Shift. Calm domestic. A few days later, Mark's wife was sitting in her room with her mother. Their older son, little Josh, was outside playing with toys. She called out to him, "Come inside, honey, and drink some juice." Josh replied, "Okay, Mom, I'm coming. Just playing a little." But he didn't come in. So his mom stepped outside. What she saw froze her. Josh was laughing, talking, and playing as if someone else was right there with him. She took him by the arm and said, "Come on, finish your juice, then you can play again." Josh looked at her seriously and said, "Mom, bring some juice for my friend too. He's playing with me." She frowned. "Honey, there's no one here." Josh smiled and pointed. "Yes, there is. Look, he's laughing and waving me over." Her heart dropped. She quickly scooped him up and carried him inside. That was the moment the entire family grew deeply worried. Ethan even tried spending a whole day upstairs, determined to capture something on his phone. But nothing happened while he was there. One afternoon, Aunt Mary was sitting outside on the porch, chopping vegetables. Across from her was the window to the upstairs bedroom, the room with the most activity. She looked up and froze. In the window sat a little girl. She looked about 4 years old, pale-skinned, with long, golden blonde hair. She was smiling sweetly, almost doll-like, as though she had been placed there on display. Aunt Mary watched in shock as the child smiled at her for several seconds, then vanished. One afternoon, Aunt Mary was sitting outside on the porch, chopping vegetables. Across from her was the window to the upstairs bedroom, the room with the most activity. She looked up and froze. In the window sat a little girl. She looked about 4 years old, pale-skinned, with long, golden blonde hair. She was smiling sweetly, almost doll-like, as though she had been placed there on display. Aunt Mary watched in shock as the child smiled at her for several seconds, then vanished. The experiences began to spread beyond the house. One cold winter evening, Mark's wife thought she saw someone rush past the window outside. Mark hushed her and quickly pulled the curtain back, but nothing was there. Even hospitals weren't safe. Once, when Aunt Mary was admitted for dialysis, she told us that while she was alone in the ward, a woman appeared in front of her and said, "Give me some water from the cooler. I'm thirsty." Aunt Mary, frail and weak, told her, "I can't get up. Help yourself." The woman's expression turned cold. Her eyes filled with rage. Just then, Aunt Mary's daughter walked in and the woman vanished. Since then, Aunt Mary's health has been in rapid decline. Every time she returns home, within a day, she falls sick again and ends up back in the hospital. We've started to believe that because the upstairs was left vacant for almost 2 years, something moved in. Something unseen, claiming that space for itself. Some neighbors have told us about spiritual healers. They say they could come and bless the house, forcing whatever it is to leave. We don't know if it will work, but we can only pray for relief. Until then, the footsteps continue. The laughter of an invisible child echoes upstairs, and the weight on the chest, that terrifying, suffocating grip, still returns. Please, if you're hearing this, pray for us. The third story is about a haunted house. I grew up in a big family, 4 brothers and 2 sisters. One of my sisters was already married, living with her husband, but the rest of us lived together with my mom and dad. When I was 12 years old, we moved into an old house in a small Midwestern town. The place had been abandoned for nearly 7 years before we got it. It stood on a neglected lot, surrounded by trees that seemed too close and too heavy with shadows. The moment you entered the front door, there was a bathroom off to the left, and just beyond it, the yard was crowded with tall, gnarled trees. Inside, a wide hall had been rented out by fruit sellers who used it as a storage area for produce. They let us stay in one of the rooms attached to that hall. That room was tiny, barely enough for all of us to squeeze into. And life was hard back then. My father was the only one earning and money was tight. In that room sat an old wooden dresser with a warped mirror. The landlords told us it belonged to them, but said we could use it. It looked ancient. Its varnish was peeling, and it carried a strange, unsettling presence. One night, sometime around 1:30 in the morning, I woke up needing to use the bathroom. Since it was across the yard, through the hall, and about 200 steps away, I was too scared to go alone. I shook my mom awake, and she agreed to walk with me. After I finished, she told me to wait outside because she had to use it too. She made me promise not to look around, just keep my head down until she came back out. It was March, but the air cut through me with a biting chill. I told myself it was just the wind blowing through the trees. But then, standing in that cold silence, I felt something. Like someone was near me, watching me. I kept my eyes on the ground, just like Mom said. Then I heard it, a faint voice calling from behind me. I froze, heart hammering, but I didn't turn around. When I finally gathered the courage to glance up, I saw the tree beside the staircase leading up to the terrace, the old mulberry tree, swaying violently, though there was no wind at all. By the time Mom came out, I was trembling. I told her what I saw, but she just whispered, "Don't talk about it. Let's go back inside." That night, I fell into a restless sleep, and the next day I woke up burning with fever. For the next few weeks, things got worse. 2 of my brothers worked late at a shoe factory nearby and often stayed overnight there. So most nights it was just me, Mom, Dad, my younger brother, and little sister in that cold, oppressive house. During the day, the place looked normal, almost pleasant, with coconut palms, a lemon tree, and a jamon tree scattered around the yard. The fruit sellers came and went, but as soon as night fell, the house turned sinister. It was as if the air thickened, and even the trees cast shadows that felt alive. I began having terrible nightmares, especially when my fever spiked. Mom, a deeply religious woman, prayed constantly over me. She warned me never to go up to the terrace alone. But I was just a kid. I didn't understand why. On Fridays, after prayers, I'd still sneak up there.
One evening, when my fever was especially high, I suddenly stood up from bed without realizing what I was doing. I walked over to that old dresser. I stared into its warped mirror and began shouting at whatever was inside it. "Come out! Show yourself! Stop tormenting me! You can't hurt me!" My mom gasped in fear. She rushed over, reading prayers under her breath. That night confirmed her worst suspicions. Strange things began to happen more often. Coconuts falling for no reason. Plants withering overnight, even though I had watered them the evening before. The fruit sellers told us we could eat whatever we wanted from their stockpile. They never even locked the hall. But no amount of kindness from them could ease the growing fear in that house. One night, again around 1:30 in the morning, I needed the bathroom. I tried waking Mom, but she was in a deep sleep, so I decided to go alone. The yard was pitch black, except for the weak glow of a bulb outside the bathroom. My heart pounded with every step. Halfway there, I felt it again, the unmistakable sensation of someone walking just behind me. I refused to turn around. On my way back, I froze. Something was blocking my path. It wasn't a person exactly. It was a presence, a shape that stood there in the dark. I bolted, and then I saw it. From the mulberry tree, something climbed down. moving unnaturally, its limbs bending the wrong way, scuttling on all fours up towards the terrace. I wanted to scream, but my voice died in my throat. I sprinted back to the room, slammed the door, and dove under the covers beside my mom. That night, a guttural, inhuman sound echoed right outside the door, rattling the walls and shaking me to my core. The next morning, I was sick again. It was always worse at night, as though the house itself was poisoning me. Eventually, we learned the truth. Before us, another family had rented the place, a husband, wife, and 2 children. For reasons no one ever understood, the entire family died inside that house. Authorities sealed it for years afterwards, and the case was never solved. My condition kept deteriorating despite prayers, medicines, and blessings. My father's friend finally urged him to take me to a well-respected spiritual healer. The man prayed over me, then asked my father to step outside with him. I sat waiting on a bench. When Dad came back, his face was pale. That man had told him, "This house isn't meant to be lived in. Whatever resides there won't allow anyone to stay. Leave as soon as you can." My father didn't wait another day. He arranged for our belongings to be moved to the shoe factory where he worked, and soon after, we left that cursed place behind. That was years ago, but the memory still haunts me. I was only 12 when I saw that thing crawl out of the mulberry tree, when I felt its eyes on me.
Let's discuss the 4th story. I've been a long-haul trucker most of my life. I've spent countless nights on the road, moving through dark highways, stormy back roads, and empty stretches where the only sound is the engine humming beneath me. I've seen accidents. I've seen fights at truck stops. And I've had more than one near-death moment in bad weather. But nothing prepared me for what happened the summer the floods came. That year, a massive storm system tore through several states. Rivers swelled, towns drowned, entire neighborhoods had to be evacuated. My uncle, who had lived in Canada for decades but kept his old family home in a tiny Midwestern town, called me one evening in a panic. Everything in that house is valuable. Furniture I had imported, electronics, antiques. I don't care what it takes. Just get a truck there and save what you can before it's ruined. I hesitated. The news had been filled with warnings, roads washed out, patrols keeping people away, danger everywhere. But he was family, and he promised he'd cover any fines, any risk, anything at all. He just wanted that stuff saved. So I agreed. I rallied a few friends from the trucking circuit, guys I'd known for years, the kind you can trust to watch your back when the job gets ugly. We loaded up, timed our route, and waited until the waters started to recede enough to drive in. It had been almost a week since the flood hit. The government had cleared everyone out, but we knew the back roads. We knew the routes most patrols wouldn't be watching. When we finally pulled in, the water was still waist-deep in places. I kept the headlights on low, guiding the truck along by instinct and memory, using the tree line as a marker where the road should have been, because the pavement itself
was buried beneath muddy water. The night was silent in a way that felt wrong. No crickets, no dogs barking, no distant engines, just the hum of my truck, the occasional ripple of water against the tires, and the nervous laughter of my buddies trying to keep spirits high. But even before we reached my uncle's house, I felt it, the weight of something out there in the dark, waiting. When we finally pulled up to my uncle's house, it was standing there like a wounded survivor. Walls streaked with mud, porch sagging, the smell of damp wood and rot heavy in the air. The water had swallowed half the front steps, but the upper room still looked intact. We didn't waste time. We waded in, pushed the swollen door open, and started hauling things upstairs. Electronics, clothes, boxes of old records, anything that hadn't already been ruined. The house creaked with every move, as if the flood had hollowed out its bones. Suddenly, one of my friends, Rick, froze near the window. "You see that?" he whispered. I followed his gaze. Across the narrow, flooded street stood the neighbor's house, 2 stories tall, shutters hanging loose, black windows reflecting the moonlight. At first, it looked empty, like every other house on that drowned street. But then, just for a second, I saw her, a woman in white. She was standing at the upstairs window, perfectly still, her face lost in shadow. And as soon as I blinked, she was gone. "Probably just a curtain," I muttered, trying to calm the rising chill in my gut. But Rick's face had gone pale. We got back to work, carrying armfuls of things through waterlogged halls, but the silence outside pressed against the windows like a weight, and every so often I'd glance across the street, swearing I saw movement in those windows again. Later, when we stepped out to load the truck, I noticed something strange. The floodwater, though filthy everywhere else, seemed clear around that house. It rippled, as if someone had just stepped into it, though no one was there. Marcus shifted nervously and said, "Man, let's just stick to your uncle's stuff. I don't like the look of that place." I agreed, but something deep inside me already knew we wouldn't be leaving that street without setting foot inside that house. We worked until the truck was nearly full, but none of us could shake that feeling. Every time I stepped outside with another load, my eyes went back to that house. It was like it was watching us. Finally, Rick muttered what we'd all been thinking. "We should check it out, just to make sure." I wanted to say no, to pack up and get the hell out of that drowned street, but something in me agreed. Curiosity, or maybe that same strange pull that had kept my eyes locked on the windows all night. Against better judgment, we crossed the flooded road. The water was cold and dark, tugging at our legs as we sloshed forward. The front door of the neighbor's house hung half open, swollen by the flood. A smell rolled out the moment we touched it. Mildew, rotting wood, and something sour, like old breath trapped too long in a closed room. We stepped inside. The first floor was wrecked,
Mud smeared across the walls, furniture overturned, photographs floating face down in stagnant pools. Every step we took echoed strangely, as if the walls themselves were listening. Then, from upstairs, came a sound. A slow, deliberate thud. Footsteps. "Someone's up there," Marcus whispered, his voice cracking. We stood frozen, water lapping at our knees, staring at the staircase that climbed into darkness. The air felt heavier with each passing second. Then came another sound, soft, almost delicate. Laughter. A woman's laughter, echoing faintly from the second floor. Rick took a step back. "Nope. Hell no. I'm not doing this." But I couldn't move. My eyes had fixed on a cracked mirror leaning against the wall. The shimmer oddly reflected not us, but something else. For a heartbeat, I saw her there again. White dress, long, dripping hair, head tilted like she was smiling at me through the glass. And then the reflection reached out, pressing its pale hand against the inside of the mirror. The mirror clattered to the floor, shattering across the mud-streaked boards. We all jumped back, hearts pounding. No one had touched it. "Let's just go," Rick hissed. His voice was high, almost panicked. But before any of us could move, the footsteps started again. Slow, steady, climbing higher, as if someone was waiting for us to follow. Against every instinct screaming at me to leave, I found myself gripping the rail and starting up the staircase. The wood groaned under my boots, slick with floodwater. Rick cursed under his breath and stayed at the bottom, but Marcus and another buddy came close behind me, their flashlights trembling in their hands. The second floor was worse. The air was heavy, damp, almost choking. Wallpaper peeled in strips. The ceiling sagged with water stains. Doors lined the hallway, some shut, some ajar. Then, from one of the rooms, we heard it again. Soft, wet, laughter. I nudged the door with my boot. The room was empty, just broken furniture, soaked carpets, and a cracked window. But then, from the far corner, we saw it. A rocking chair, moving, back and forth, slow, deliberate, and seated there was a shape, pale as milk, hair hanging down in dripping strands, white dress clinging like it had just been pulled out of the flood. Her face was hidden, but I could feel her eyes fixed on us. Marcus whispered, "Do you see her?" Before I could answer, the chair stopped, dead still. The figure lifted her head. Her face was swollen, gray. Lips stretched into something that wasn't a smile, but something worse, like she was trying to remember how. The door slammed shut behind us.
The slam shook the walls. We spun around, shoving at the door, but it wouldn't budge. It felt like something was holding it shut from the other side. Behind us, the rocking chair creaked once, then stilled. When I turned back, the woman wasn't sitting there anymore. She was standing. Her dress clung to her body, dripping onto the ruined carpet. her head tilted too far to the side, like her neck had been broken. Water streamed from her hair, pooling at her bare feet. Then she moved, not walking, sliding, like the floor itself was carrying her closer. Marcus screamed and swung his flashlight at her. The beam cut across her ruined face. For a second, her eyes locked onto mine. They were pale, cloudy, like she drowned long ago. The flashlight exploded with a sharp pop, plunging us into darkness. I grabbed Marcus and yanked him toward the door, rammed my shoulder against it until the swollen wood cracked. Finally, it burst open. We tumbled back into the hallway. Rick was waiting there, wild-eyed. "What the hell happened in there?" he shouted. We didn't answer. We just ran. Down the stairs, splashing through the floodwater, pushing out into the night. Behind us, from the broken windows of the house, came that laughter again. Louder this time, following us into the street. We didn't stop running until we were in the truck. Engine roaring, wheels turning up muddy water as we tore out of that drowned town. Even now, years later, I can still hear that laughter. And sometimes, when I pass through flooded places on night runs, I catch her in the glass of my side mirror. Soaked hair, tilted head, and that terrible, broken smile. If this story sent chills down your spine, remember, your likes keep the nightmares alive. And your subscription welcomes you into the Spooky Stories family. Until next time, sleep tight, if you can.